Chapter 601. This woman's cheeks were slightly protruding, and her face was extremely thin. Her eyes were sharp and spirited, and Arba felt that she seemed to have swept an imperceptible glance at her face when she stood up. That gaze was displeasing. "Princess Anam, what do you have to say?" The Queen's tone towards Wu Hongma was rather amiable. "Your Majesty the Queen, my niece Wu Xiaosu has learned a new fan dance. It looks rather interesting, so I'll have her dance a song for your Majesty here to liven things up a bit." The Queen nodded slightly. "Very good." The 18-year-old girl named Wu Xiaosu had probably made preparations early on. As soon as the Queen nodded, she walked into the brilliant Sun Hall under the royal maid's guidance, dressed in a long pink dress with smoke and sand fluttering around her. She held her head high, her chest puffed out, and her chin raised proudly. "Greetings, Your Majesty the Queen." Wu Xiaosu and the group of girls greeted in unison. "Rise." "Wu Xiaosu? Is it the Wu family's eldest daughter?" the Queen asked softly. Princess Anam nodded with a smile. Replying, "Your Majesty, it is indeed the Wu family's eldest daughter." This smile caused the vassal king consort of Nan's protruding cheekbones to deepen. "Xiaosu has embarrassed herself." After the Wu estate's eldest miss, Wu Xiaosu, bowed again, she turned around and signaled the two dancers behind her with her eyes. Instantly, the melodious sound of a zither rang out, and Wu Xiaosu's body bent backward in a very exaggerated arc. Her waist was so soft that it could almost be snapped in half. Swish! A pink feather fan slid out from her sleeve, covering half of her face. The fan dance appeared extremely beautiful under the performance of 16 young and beautiful girls, and every movement could become a beautiful scene. The stoic face was expressionless as she poked at the food in front of her with her chopsticks. Then, she casually flipped through the food and quickly put down her chopsticks in disdain. The food had already cooled down, and it couldn't even compare to her family's Chochio's small, warm, salt-free stew. It truly was very boring. To entertain so many guests, the food was naturally prepared by the imperial kitchen. On the way from the imperial kitchen to the central palace, although the food was packed in brocade boxes and padded with cotton wool, it was still a long journey. It would be strange if the dishes were not cold after being carried all the way here on such a snowy day. The little fellow had always been a picky eater and was unwilling to touch the cold food. How could her mother, Wei Ziqin, not know her daughter's delicate temperament? Looking at her daughter from afar, her eyes were slightly worried. "Crown Princess, let this servant add some fruit wine for you." A palace maid serving beside her lowered her head and took 2 steps closer. She held the white jade pot in her hand and added a fruity wine to Arba's cup. This was a winter fruit that could grow in a world of ice and snow. It could be used to fill one's stomach when one was hungry. It was also good for brewing wine. The fruit's fragrance was very rich. The main reason was that this type of plant was very easy to grow, and the probability of mutation was not high. Therefore, in the inner city of the capital, the seeds of this type of fruit tree had been planted on a large scale in recent years to satisfy various needs. Of course, to the poor and starving commoners at the bottom, the price of something like the winter fruit was still very high. Arba expressionlessly raised her wine cup and fanned it twice with her hand. As a fruity fragrance assailed her nostrils, Arba's expression turned icy cold in a split second. With a flip of her wrist, the cup of top-notch fruit wine splashed onto the palace maid's face. Ah! Chapter 602. The palace maid suddenly fell to the ground and covered her eyes, ears, mouth, and nose with her hands. Black blood spurted out from her face, looking extremely terrifying. Everyone was in an uproar and stopped eating. Her Majesty the Queen was so shocked that she suddenly stood up from her seat, and the song and dance stopped. Wu Xiaosu had just danced to the climax of the dance when she was suddenly interrupted. The music stopped, and the girl turned around with a face full of shame and resentment. Arba looked at her coldly and slightly glanced sideways at the palace maid who was covering her face and rolling back and forth on the ground. He didn't say anything for a long time. The brilliant Sun Hall was dead silent. Everyone stared at the palace maid with frightened eyes. "Crown Princess, what did you do?" Consort Zheng suddenly screamed. Deeply afraid that that royal maid would be blind and roll in front of her, contaminating her with some filth, noble Consort Zhang continuously retreated several steps, making a fuss over nothing, acting like a village woman. Arba coldly said, "This palace maid poured me a cup of poisoned wine, I just gave it to her." Everyone was silent. "Thank you. Crown Princess, why are you so generous? Poisoned wine." Her Majesty the Queen's eyelids suddenly jumped. Thinking of her son's protective expression when he left, she couldn't help but reach out and press her aching head. With her son's temperament, his beloved wife was attacked by an assassin in the Brilliant Sun Hall, so he definitely wouldn't leave the matter at that. "Go and ask old Imperial Physician Chow to come here." Seeing the palace maid rolling on the ground but not dying, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. That palace maid's face should be rotten. Otherwise, why would there be black water constantly coming out from her 5 fingers? What kind of powerful poison was this? Just pouring wine on a person's face would immediately cause the skin to rot and decay? What if the crown princess drank this cup of poisoned wine? Everyone couldn't help but tremble. After a long time, old Imperial Physician Chow hurried over to the central palace. As soon as they entered the Brilliant Sun Hall, they saw the poisoned palace maid wailing in grief in the middle of the hall. She hadn't stopped breathing. Everyone had scattered far away. No one dared to approach the palace maid. Only a young girl in a red dress with a cold face stood calmly beside the screaming palace maid. From time to time, she would step forward and kick her. "Stop screaming, the Imperial Physician is here." Old Imperial Physician Chow looked at the young lady speechlessly and hurriedly went forward to pick up the broken wine jug and cup. He sniffed it and tested it with his medicine before nodding with certainty. The wine was poisoned. "It's just that this old man's knowledge is shallow and I don't know how this poison is concocted, so I don't have a prescription for it." Chow Mu's lips curled up. "If you can identify the antidote for my poison, then you're really amazing." When the palace maid poured the wine for her, she smelled that something was wrong with the wine. Taking advantage of the time she took to fan the top of the wine cup, she had already sprinkled the poison powder down and then smashed the entire cup of wine on the palace maid's face. "Haha, what is this called?" "This is called harming others and harming oneself." The palace maid had only given him a slow-acting poison. This kind of poison had to be taken for at least 3 months. After accumulating in the body over the years, it would suddenly erupt and cause a sudden death. The good thing was that there were no signs of sudden death from poison at all. She was just a little curious. Who would use this kind of mild poison to deal with her? Was there going to be another move in the future? Chapter 603. She was very patient, someone who knew how to do big things. She wanted to see if that person would continue to use this kind of slow-acting poison on her. Arba tilted her head and looked at the queen, who had an ugly expression. "How is it? Are you sure that she wants to harm me?" The queen nodded. "Crown Princess, how do you want to deal with this person?" "Kill her." Arba opened her mouth and spat out these 2 words without any scruples. The crowd of noble maidens looked at her with a bit of fear in their eyes. After a short period of interaction, they seemed to have detected 8 words from the crown princess. Vicious, not to be trifled with. The vassal king consort of Annan said with a smile, "The crown prince consort is truly remarkable, knowing that it was poisoned by that royal maid just by smelling the scent of the fruit wine. Could it be that the crown prince consort also has some experience in using poison?" Arba glanced at her innocently. "That's not the case." "Oh. What do you mean?" Princess Anam asked with a smile. "If the crown princess hit the nail on the head, then her luck is really too good. This person's actions are sneaky." Her hand kept trembling when she was pouring the wine. "I poured the wine to test her, but I didn't expect that she really poisoned it. I just don't know if the other wine cups were poisoned as well." Everyone looked at the palace maid who was pouring the wine with a face full of horror. Some of them even covered their throats and turned around to cough with all their might, as if they wanted to vomit out the wine that had just entered their stomachs. "Imperial Physician Chow, take a look at the wine of the other madams and misses." How could the queen not understand the horror in these people's eyes? The old imperial physician nodded and went forward. After checking the wine cups one by one, he shook his head and said, "The other wine cups are all non-toxic." The queen nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. The seriousness in her eyes deepened a little. Then this poisoning of the wine was clearly targeted at the crown princess. For such a thing to happen in her brilliant Sun Palace Hall, wasn't this deliberately causing a trace of discord between her and her son? Wasn't this deliberately causing her to feel uncomfortable in her heart? Crown Princess, this queen will definitely uphold justice for you in this matter and give you an explanation. The queen said in a low voice. Arbor nodded expressionlessly. She didn't expect the queen to be able to find out anything. In any case, poisoning her was just like scratching an itch for her. They could use soldiers to block to water to block to use earth to block of water. At this moment, the palace maid who was tossing and turning onto the floor was to toss and turn to slowly breathe. To prevent the queens to prevent a change to burn to the night. The queen to the crown princess. To the queen to be to be of B. Of two to men to men to be to mend. Moreover, the queen was still a bit worried. Would this crown princess be so petty as to think that she was the one behind this poisoning? However, she couldn't see any expression from that expressionless face, so there was no way to know her true thoughts. The queen was extremely gloomy. She felt so stifled just looking at her perfectly expressionless daughter-in-law. Consort Cheng had so many daughters-in-law, and which one of them wasn't gentle to their husbands and mothers-in-law? No matter how she looked at her daughter-in-law, she didn't have any expression. Just looking at her made her a bit angry. The small banquet ended abruptly. Before Consort Zhang was helped away by the servants, she coldly swept a glance at Arbor from the corner of her eyes. She gracefully walked out of the brilliant Sun Palace's main entrance in a pair of embroidered shoes. Not done yet. Chapter 604. The moment Arbor walked out of the brilliant Sun Hall, she was pounced on by a chirping Xiao Lin. Sister, are you coming home with us today? Jolin asked with a grin. Your sister can't go back today. Arbor was just about to agree when she was interrupted by that hateful voice. She turned to glare at him. The crown prince quickly walked over and naturally reached out to hold her little hand. He turned to smile at Wei Ziqin. Mother. Jojo still has to stay here for a few more days. Tomorrow, Lord Father will summon her, so there's no need to go through so much trouble. Mother, don't worry, I'll take good care of Jojo. This shameless person who was acting all familiar with her even called her mother in front of all the noble ladies who had yet to leave. Wei Ziqin was stunned. Then she covered her mouth and laughed. After laughing, Wei Ziqin pulled her daughter's little hand. Crown Prince, I'll leave after having a few intimate words with Jojo. Okay, I'll wait here for Jojo. The Crown Prince smiled and nodded. Wei Ziqin pulled Arbor a little further away and walked under the eaves of the corridor. She whispered, Daughter, you'll be of marriageable age in 3 months, so you're still young. Don't do anything out of line that will make Mother worried, okay? With Arbor's clever mind, she understood what her mother wanted to say when she heard her mother's hemming and hawing. Her little face inexplicably reddened. Mother, what are you talking about? He's been sleeping alone in the side chamber for the past 2 days. Wei Ziqin beamed and nodded. She couldn't help but praise her son-in-law. I knew that Xiao Mo is a very sensible child. He has a good character and a good temperament. He's also handsome. Mother really didn't misjudge him. You two are a match made in heaven. Ha ha ha. Mother, please stop praising. I'm your biological daughter, aren't I? Good daughter, your performance in the main hall today was also. You should be more careful in the future. After all, she's the great king's imperial concubine. We still have to give her some face. Arbor snorted. Those people aren't qualified for me to be careful. After saying that, he glanced at his mother's eager expression and couldn't help but nod helplessly. I know. In short, if others don't come to provoke me, I won't take the initiative to provoke others. You lass. All right, mother just wants to say a few words to you. I'll leave the palace with your younger sister first. Remember to come back in 2 days. It's not good for your reputation if you always live together before you get married. You should take it easy. After all, gossip is a fearful thing. Arbor nodded. Mom, I'll come back early. I miss your cooking. Silly girl. Whenever you come back, mother will cook for you. There's no need to worry that you won't have something to eat. Wei Ziqin chuckled happily, her eyes filled with deep love. Sister, when you come back with brother-in-law, remember to take a detour to the Wong sesame seed shop and bring me a… Woo-woo, mother, why are you covering my mouth? Bring a Wong sesame seed shop. Woo-woo. The little foodie was dragged away by Wei Ziqin with her mouth covered. Arbor sat in the carriage and couldn't help but purse her lips and want to laugh. She had been so busy since she came back that she forgot to prepare some snacks for her foodie sister. She must prepare some delicious food for her in 2 days. Also, she didn't see Brother Xiao Hu last time. She wondered if he had come out of seclusion. The Crown Prince was bursting with joy as he looked in the direction the little foodie left. He smiled and turned to Arbor. Sister is really clever. As expected, her personality is like you, innocent, lively, and interesting. When we go back in 2 days, we'll bring her a few more sesame seed cakes. 2 stacks won't be a problem. Chapter 605. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he glanced at him. Do you think my sister is a pig? Hui Feng really wanted to ridicule him. Your Highness, are you blind? How is your stoic-faced wife lively and interesting? Can she be lively? During the journey, the Crown Prince reached out to hold Arbor's small hand. Jojo, Imperial Mother definitely didn't have someone pour that poisoned wine. You have to believe me. Arbor glanced at him and gave him a, "Do you think I'm an idiot?" look. The Crown Prince chuckled foolishly and nodded repeatedly. I knew my Jojo is very smart, one of a kind in the world. I'll definitely investigate this matter thoroughly. This person dared to poison you in front of everyone, so they must have bribed that royal maid by your side. And there aren't many people who can bribe my Imperial Mother's palace. It's such a rare poison. I sprinkled that powder into the wine cup, Arbor indifferently said. Xiao Mu explained dryly, I sprinkled a pinch of incomparably toxic poison powder so that the poison would spread and fester upon contact with her skin. The Crown Prince. As expected, my wife isn't ordinary. Hui Feng's mouth twitched. The Crown Princess is so savage. What should I do? She previously gave me a slow-acting poison. 3 months later, I might have unknowingly kicked my legs and died. Arbor's indifferent voice caused the Crown Prince's eyes to surge with fury. I'm just curious. Will this person still send someone to infiltrate my side and continue to poison me? He really was very curious. Darling, what do you plan to do? I'll cooperate fully. Tell me. Hui Feng. Your Highness, hurry and pick up your moral integrity that's all over the floor. Where did my wise and mighty Highness who's praised by tens of thousands of people go? I plan to beat them at their own game and wait for that person to infiltrate my side. I'll secretly switch all of that person's poison onto himself. The Crown Prince reached out to lift her onto his lap and nodded repeatedly. Jojo, you're so awesome. Hui Feng. Your Majesty Crown Princess, are you sure it's not because you're lazy and don't want to investigate, so you're saying things like, waiting for rabbits to appear? By the way, I remember someone said last night that he would tell me a big joke when he comes back from the morning assembly. Arbor pursed his lips. The Crown Prince immediately understood and laughed in a low voice. Last night, I heard that Second Imperial Brother's residence was robbed. The whole night was chaotic. Second Imperial Brother fell down while trying to catch the thief, and his elbow was broken. Arbor pursed his lips. But today, when I saw his mother, Lu Fei, she was still smiling as if nothing had happened. How can he still laugh when his son is in such a sorry state? Hui Feng. Her Highness the Crown Princess's choice of words feels a bit strange. The more interesting thing is tonight. Yesterday was just a warm-up. Did he think that he would be able to sleep peacefully today? Umph. The Crown Prince whispered a few words into her ear. Arba's eyes suddenly widened, and she turned to look at the Crown Prince. What a fraud. Who could be his match? Jojo, isn't it funny? Emolien was all smiles as he hugged his little wife and shook her. Smile for me. Arba turned her little head and faced him with the back of her head. Emolien chuckled softly. Just as he was about to turn the little fellow's head back, he saw a black shadow suddenly land next to the carriage and anxiously say, Your Highness, Madame Chow and Second Miss were attacked at Dongshan Gate. Our men are already doing their best to fend them off, so they're fine for now. What? Arba was alarmed, and the Crown Prince's expression also turned solemn. After the update ended, the nap began. Chapter 606. The two of them were no longer in the mood to enjoy the snowy night along the way. They both jumped off the carriage and rushed towards Dongshan Gate at an extremely fast speed. Today, all the carriages of the noble women and noble ladies were arranged to pass through Dongshan Gate. Because Wei Ziqin spoke a few more words with her family's daughter, she came out a little later. The carriage followed Dongshan Gate's path, and there weren't many people under the decorated archway. As the snowflakes became heavier, the Wu family's carriage could be seen carrying their eldest young miss, Wu Xiaosu, slowly moving forward. Wu Xiaosu had the coachman deliberately slow down, waiting for Wei Ziqin's carriage to come up. Madame Chow. Eldest young Miss Wu unhurriedly lifted the curtain and poked her head out to softly call out. Wei Ziqin also lifted a corner of the curtain and looked at eldest young Miss Wu. She nodded and said, Young Miss Wu, what's the matter? Madame Chow, I'm really sorry. There seems to be a problem with my carriage's wheels. I wonder if you could give me a ride? Wei Ziqin glanced sideways and saw that the rear wheels of Wu Xiaosu's carriage were indeed a little crooked, as if they wouldn't be able to support a long journey. Young Miss Wu, we don't seem to be going the same way. Xiao Lin poked her head out and grinned at Wu Xiaosu. I see that your wheels are only a little crooked, so they should be able to run for a while. Your home isn't far from Dongshan Gate, so you should be able to hold on. Unlike us, we still have to go around to the North Gate. If we had to take another detour to give you a ride, my mother and I don't know how long it would take to reach home. The implication was that since young Miss Wu was so considerate, she shouldn't be so tactless as to do something so overboard. Wu Xiaosu didn't expect that this little girl's mouth would be so sharp, wanting to send her off with just a few words. Her face stiffened slightly, looking a little unsightly. That coachman jumped off the carriage at the right time and bowed to Wei Ziqin, saying, Madame Chow, I originally didn't want to trouble you. But from this old servant's many years of experience driving carriages, these wheels really won't be able to hold on for long. Right now, it's freezing outside. If the wheels break and can't run, then our young miss will have to endure the entire night in the snow. Madam, please be so kind as to give our young lady a ride. This old servant is familiar with the roads in this area and can point out a shortcut for Madam. I beg for Madam's help. Wei Ziqin was a kind-hearted person and was about to open her mouth to agree. Xiao Lin exclaimed from the other end, Aya. Her small face suddenly squeezed together and cold sweat dripped down from her head. She began to display her extraordinary acting skills. What's wrong? What's wrong? Wei Ziqin was surprised. The maidservant Chunying also asked anxiously, Second Miss, what's wrong? Where does it hurt, Second Miss? My stomach hurts. Mother. My stomach hurts so much. Xiao Lin let out a trembling groan, and her entire body began to tremble. Lin, don't scare your mother. Everything was fine just now. Why is your stomach hurting now? Mother, it must be the cold wind that blew in and froze me. Mother, let's go home quickly. My stomach hurts so much that I'm about to die. Don't speak nonsense. Wei Ziqin patted the back of her daughter's hand, feeling sorry for her. She hastily stuck her head out and said to the coachman, "Hurry, hurry back to the residence." "Yes, madam." Of course, the Chow family's coachman wasn't happy that they had to take a detour in such a snowy day. Now that he heard his wife's order, he whipped the horse and made a prompt decision to drive the carriage away. Chapter 607. Wu Xiaosu glared at the Chow family's carriage with a fiery glare. With a bang, she slammed the carriage frame and angrily reprimanded, "Slut! The older one is so slutty, and the younger one is also slutty. Miss, what should we do now? If we can't get on the Chow family's carriage, then we can't." Wu Xiaosu's personal maidservant stuttered. Wu Xiaosu slapped her across the face, causing her to cry out in alarm. She covered her face and hung her head, tears about to roll down her cheeks. "You're asking me what to do? What's the use of raising you bunch of trash? It's fine if you don't know how to come up with ideas, but now you're asking me what to do." The personal maidservant knelt down in the carriage with tears in her eyes, repeatedly kowtowing and begging for mercy. The Chow family's carriage was already far away at this time, turning left after exiting Dongshan Gate. Wei Ziqin poked her daughter's forehead in annoyance and amusement. "Stop pretending." This act came as she wished, and she could even force herself to break out in a cold sweat. How could this younger daughter be so talented? Chow Lin stuck out her tongue and revealed a sweet smile. She held her mother's arm and said, "Mother, the weather is so cold, and it didn't break down earlier or later. It just had to wait until we arrived before her carriage broke down. If that Miss Wu said she didn't have any other plans, I don't believe it. We shouldn't have the heart to harm others, but we must be vigilant against others." Elder sister also said that we shouldn't be overly kind. We have to be clear-eyed and clear-minded, and think more about everything. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but find it funny. These two daughters were both mischievous. The older one had a cold face and didn't speak much, but her thoughts were more meticulous than anyone else's. The younger one looked carefree and simple-minded on the surface, but in reality, her heart wasn't coarse, and her mind was very active. Mother. I just feel that Miss Wu doesn't seem like a kind person. Let's not pay too much attention to her. Amen." Wei Ziqin glanced at her and sighed. "My daughter has grown up and has more ideas. Mother can't control her anymore." Chow Lin giggled and hugged her mother's arm affectionately. "What are you saying, Mother? Your daughter is very obedient." While the mother and daughter were chatting affectionately, a sword light suddenly flew over and chopped down on the carriage, instantly chopping off one of the shafts with a clang sound. The coachman couldn't control himself and rolled down from his position. Before he could make a sound, his head was chopped off by a flash of light in front of him. The mother and daughter duo grabbed Chunying and flew out of the broken carriage. The carriage that had fallen to the ground was instantly pierced by arrows like a hornet's nest. Chunying was extremely shocked. After landing on the ground, she hurriedly shouted, "Madam, second miss, quickly leave. Don't worry about this servant." More than a dozen adult men dressed in night clothes surrounded the mother and daughter duo. Their auras were very powerful. The moment they attacked, they fiercely attacked the two of them. Chunying stepped back. Chow Lin's eyes darkened. At this moment, a sharp glint faintly bloomed in the eyes of the 11-year-old girl. Wei Ziqin waved her sleeve to block one person's attack, and she looked at the newcomers with a slightly dark expression. "Who are you? You actually dare to attack an imperial court's madam in front of Dongshan Gate. Do you not want to live?" The dozen or so night walkers didn't say anything. They only surrounded Wei Ziqin and her daughter and launched attacks without any regard for their lives. Among these dozen or so people, one of them was a level 9 mystic cultivator with extremely vigorous mystic energy. Wei Ziqin, a mere level 3 mystic cultivator, and Chow Lin, a level 4 mystic cultivator, naturally weren't his match. Chapter 608. As the attacks gradually intensified, the night pervaded. Two agile young men in black suddenly jumped into the encirclement. Accompanied by two tiger roars, two enormous mystic beasts pounced forward and bit the palms of the two night walkers, doing their best to tear them apart. The night walkers merely grunted and didn't make any sound. Madam Chow, hold on. We've already sent people to inform the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Don't panic. The young man who spoke blocked in front of Wei Ziqin with his sword, completely blocking a level 5 mystic cultivator's attack. Among these people, apart from that level 9 mystic cultivator, most of the others only had level 5 or level 6 cultivation, and half of them were body cultivators around the 6th layer. It was naturally more than enough to deal with Wei Ziqin and her daughter's level 3 and level 4 cultivation, but it was completely insufficient in front of a level 10 mystic cultivator. Those two young men led their mystic beasts and quickly cleared a path out of the encirclement. They protected the mother and daughter pair and were about to charge out of the encirclement. Suddenly, their bodies tensed up as if they sensed something, and they abruptly looked up. That level 9 mystic cultivator took out two white beads the size of pellets from his bosom. With a cold snort, he abruptly flicked them at the two young mystic cultivators. Madam Chow. Second miss, quickly move aside. The two young men each grabbed one of the mother and daughter pair and scattered to the left and right. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of the level 11 mystic energy beads explosions tore apart the silent night and alarmed nearly half of the capital citizens. Because the two young men wanted to protect Wei Ziqin and her daughter, their internal organs were impacted by the mystic energy beads explosions. They coughed several times, and blood flowed out of the corners of their mouths at almost the same time. The level 9 mystic cultivator's ghostly figure appeared in front of one of them and struck that young man's back with his palm. Taking advantage of the young man flying out, the level 9 mystic cultivator seized Wei Ziqin from his hands and struck the back of her neck, causing her to faint. Mother! Xiao Lin tightly clenched her fists with reddened eyes. The level 9 mystic cultivator suddenly raised his sleeve and shot an arrow in her direction. That sleeve arrow swiftly arrived in front of Xiao Lin in the blink of an eye. The level 10 mystic cultivator youth's expression chilled, and he swiftly raised his hand to control that sleeve arrow with mystic energy, causing it to explode in front of his eyes with a bang. Then, his expression changed slightly as he cursed in his heart. The sleeve arrow was smeared with poisonous powder. After such an explosion, the wind blew and scattered the powder, causing his body to tremble slightly. The two mystical beasts were just about to pounce forward and bite him, but because they had inhaled a mouthful of poison powder, their forehooves slipped and they suddenly fell to the ground. The level 9 mystic cultivator saw an opportunity and swiftly scuttled to this level 10 mystic cultivator youth side. He struck the youth's chest with his palm again, and his firm fingers grabbed Xiao Lin's pulse and exerted force. Jolin furrowed his brows in pain. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as his body fell limply to the ground. The remaining 7 or 8 night walkers swarmed forward in a well-trained manner. They separated the unconscious mother and daughter and carried them into 2 prepared carriages. Bai An, who was driving the carriages, berated twice before driving the carriages to the left and right to separate the mother and daughter and take them away. When the Crown Prince and Crown Princess rushed over, they saw the 2 carriages separating left and right as fast as lightning, and their hearts instantly skipped a beat. Your Highness! 2 black-clothed youths scrambled up from the ground and stumbled as they ran to them. They separately escaped to Huabei Gate and Jinnan Gate. Chapter 609. Emo Lien and Arbor looked at each other, nodded in tacit understanding, and then split up to chase after the carriage. The dozen or so hidden guards whistled and followed closely behind Arbor. Arbor's eyes were already burning with raging flames. Today, she was going to announce to the world that whoever dared to capture her family and hurt them, she would make them die a horrible death and regret coming to this world. The carriage sped forward, and the coachman looked back from time to time. Arbor's face was cold as she took out a speed talisman and placed it on herself. At the same time, Arbor was like a flash of lightning as she sped forward. The coachman shouted, and the carriage quickly turned a corner on the city street. Arbor wasn't willing to give up. She tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and jumped onto the roof. She could only hear the wind blowing past her ears. Her speed was so fast that she left behind an illusory white shadow. Whoosh whoosh. After a few leaps, Xiao Mu jumped down from the white eaves covered in a thick layer of snow. A harsh glint flashed through her eyes. She spread her fingers and the water instantly condensed into ice crystals. She raised her hand and hundreds of ice crystals shot out. Like snow, rain, ice, and wind, they instantly shattered the carriage into pieces. The coachman's eyes were filled with a trace of panic and surprise. His hands didn't stop moving as he held the reins and urged the horse to run. However, Abba saw clearly that her mother and sister weren't in the carriage. "You're courting death." Xiao Mu's eyes burst out with a cold glint, and she leaped up. Mystic energy enveloped her body as she struck down a critical strike with a bang. The shaft of the carriage collapsed at the same time, and the three people in the carriage were about to jump up and escape. Abba's dagger was like a bolt of lightning as it slashed across the coachman's neck. A round head rolled under the wheel of the carriage, but the horse still continued to charge forward due to inertia. After the three body-securing talismans were cast, the body cultivators stiffened their bodies and assumed a posture that suggested they were about to get up and flee. "Speak. Where are the people in the carriage?" Xiao Mu slapped one of them, and the wind from her palm swept across one of their faces. "If you don't tell me, I'll make you beg for death." Abba's 5 fingers ruthlessly pierced into the man's shoulder, his cold eyes staring straight at the man. Ah! That body cultivator's body was rather sturdy, but he didn't expect his bones to be crushed by the girl's grasp. Abba didn't have the time to listen to his screams. He grabbed him by the neck and raised a dictum talisman in his hand. "Let me tell you. If you don't tell me the truth, wait until I use the dictum talisman and ask for the whereabouts of your family. I will bury them in the rivers, lakes, and seas, and grind their bones to dust. Die without a burial ground." That person's pupils shrank. The light in his eyes was as if he was looking at a fiend. "Speak." Inserting the dictum talisman would take some time. What she lacked the most now was time. She needed to know the whereabouts of her mother and sister. Now was the time. She couldn't wait another second. "I'll talk." That level 9 mystic cultivator carried second Miss Chow away when he was making a detour just now. Crack. That person's gaze turned sluggish. His neck tilted slightly, and his entire head drooped down due to his broken neck. Crack, crack. After 2 consecutive sounds of bones breaking, the other 2 body cultivators also died on the spot. Xiao Mu promptly summoned Qingwan and jumped onto its back. She then spread out her spiritual conscious and shouted while pointing to the left, "There." Chapter 610. With a shrill cry, Qingwan spread its wings with a whoosh and fiercely chased in the direction Abba had pointed out. Qingwan's speed had already reached its peak. Abba's stoic face had already been completely replaced by a frosty expression. Looking at her with eyes that froze 3,000 feet of ice, it was as if they had returned to that night several years ago, terrifyingly desolate and silent. She wanted killed people. She wanted to skin them alive and kill them without a doubt. Shriek. Qingwan swooped down from the sky, already locking onto a running target. That person was carrying Xiao Lin and dashing at an extremely fast speed. Their goal seemed to be to leave Jinnan Gate and head toward Shiluo Street. Shiluo Street housed many commoners who had fled to the capital from outside the city. It could be said that it was the most crowded place in the entire capital. Most of the commoners didn't have houses. Instead, they set up piles of tents outside their houses. Those who could afford to live in houses on Shiluo Street were usually mystic cultivators or body cultivators. If this guy ran into Shiluo Street with his little sister and blended into the pile of tents, it would be troublesome to find them. Abba hooked his lips in a sneer. He had already stood up from Qingwan's back and jumped down, slapping the immobilization talisman in his hand towards that person's back. However, once the immobilization talisman was activated, that person's body actually only swayed slightly before immediately continuing to run forward with nimble movements. She was about to cross Shiluo Street's decorated archway and enter the tent area. Abba's gaze hardened as he used his spiritual conscious to launch a swift and violent mental attack. Although she had yet to enter the spiritual realm, her mystic conscious had already advanced to spiritual conscious. The range of her spiritual conscious application was much wider than her mystic conscious. Not only could she infiltrate other people's inner worlds and clearly see their mystic veins, she could even launch an invisible attack. Under her spiritual conscious identification, the other party's cultivation was already clear as day. So it's a level 12 mystic cultivator who used an aura-concealing talisman to disguise herself as a level 9 mystic cultivator. Arbor snorted coldly. His spiritual conscious had already infiltrated the other party's conscious and inflicted a lacerating injury. Ah! That mystic cultivator clearly didn't expect Arbor to have such a method. His conscious felt as if it had been ruthlessly struck by someone, and it almost started to shatter from the root. This made him flustered, and his grip loosened, causing Xiao Lin to fall to the ground. Xiao Mu's figure abruptly shot up and flitted past her younger sister. She directly tossed her backwards, directly throwing her to the several hidden guards that had followed closely behind her. Don't interfere. Arbor stretched out his 5 fingers and shook them behind him. His eyes were filled with severity as he coldly gazed at the level 12 mystic cultivator in front of him. Such a beautiful snowy night, let's not disturb the commoners of Shiluo Street. Life isn't easy. Don't cause trouble for others. After saying this, she actually pulled out an extremely thin vine from her sleeve and coldly looked at that mystic cultivator. Since I can't use a dictum talisman on you, then forget it. I'll use some other methods to make you speak. That person couldn't help but let out a snort of laughter. Little girl, you're quite arrogant. Unfortunately, I don't know if you'll have the life to return to your Eastern Palace alive. Is that so? Arbor's lips curled into a meaningful sneer. She abruptly swung the vine in the direction of the level 12 mystic cultivator, aiming straight for his face. At the same time, Arbor used another spiritual conscious attack. Using 2 spiritual conscious attacks in a short period of time had already reached the limit of her spiritual conscious usage. Because she wanted to end the battle quickly. Chapter 6:11. Under the impact of Arbor's spiritual sense, the level 12 mystic cultivator's conscious rapidly crumbled. His head throbbed with pain, and he was about to topple to the ground. His gaze was horrified, and he inwardly cursed. His fingers had already fished out 2 mystic energy beads from his inner world. Would Arbor give him the chance to use the mystic energy beads? The vine twined around the level 12 mystic cultivator's wrist like a living creature. It didn't seem to exert much force, but a crisp crack was heard. That level 12 mystic cultivator's pupils contracted, and he simply looked down at his wrist that had been snapped by the vine in disbelief. How was this possible? How could a thin and soft vine break his wrist in a matter of seconds? Was this still the body of a level 12 mystic cultivator? The 2 mystic energy beads were nimbly swallowed by the vine and completely turned into nourishment for Qiuqiu. This level 12 mystic cultivator would never have imagined that this vine was actually a clone of the sapling Qiuqiu. It possessed a portion of the sapling's strength, so it was more than enough to deal with this level 12 mystic cultivator. Slap. The vine once again pressed forward and whipped that level 12 mystic cultivator's face. He could even hear the crisp sound of his cheekbone cracking. It seemed like his cheekbone had completely shattered. No. He tried his best to regulate his chaotic breathing and pacify his unbearably painful conscience. But Arbor wouldn't give him time to catch his breath. The vine whipped the level 12 mystic cultivator's limbs and face more than a dozen times in a row. The last hit directly sent that person's eyeball flying out of its socket. Arbor's lips curled into a mocking smile. Now, do you still think that I can't return to the Eastern Palace? The hidden guards shrunk their necks in their hiding places. Heavens! The Crown Princess's methods were far from what ordinary people could compare to. Perhaps she normally didn't care much about others, but once she was truly angered, her methods would absolutely be dangerous and severe. Dictum talisman. Arbor didn't waste words with him and directly threw a dictum talisman at him. The dictum talisman could be said to be ineffective against people with higher cultivation than her. But now, The person in front of him had already been beaten like a dog, and his conscience was almost shattered. His current cultivation could no longer be considered to be at level 12. Arbor wanted to test the effect of the dictum talisman. After waiting for almost a minute, her brows furrowed slightly. Just when he thought that the dictum talisman couldn't escape from the laws and was destined to lose its effect, Meng Chao suddenly realized something. A faint light suddenly flitted across the miserable level. 12 Mystic Cultivators Glabella. Success. Arbor raised his eyebrows and went straight to the point. Who sent you to kidnap Madame Chow and second Miss Chow? Cough, cough, cough. The level 12 Mystic Cultivator coughed heavily on the ground and said hoarsely, yes, yes. He was under the effect of the dictum talisman, so he couldn't help but tell the person who had contacted him in detail. A bone-chilling coldness flashed through Arbor's eyes. She held the vine in one hand and picked up the panting level 12 Mystic Cultivator like a gunny sack with the other. She stood up and leaped down, heading toward the location he spoke of. The hidden guards behind her looked at each other and cried out in alarm before hastily running after her. As for her mother's side, Emolienne definitely wouldn't have any problems handling it, so she wasn't in a hurry to find Crown Prince Emo. She merely picked up this person with a sneer on her lips as she dashed madly towards her target. Chapter 612. At this moment, inside Sephora Flower Palace, 2 palace maids were kneeling in front of the soft couch and massaging Her Highness Consort Zheng's legs as they carefully attended to her. The palace maids could tell that Her Highness was currently in a very good mood as a carefree smile hung at the corners of her mouth. Your Highness, the Zheng Estate's second manager Qi has been waiting outside for a long time. Consort Zheng's personal nanny, Mammy Su, quickly walked in and bowed. Call him in. Consort Zhang brushed away the hair on her face with waning interest and lazily propped up her hand as she lay there motionlessly. Second manager Qi strode in and prostrated himself with a fawning expression. This lowly one, Qi Ming, greets your Highness noble consort. Qi Ming, you came here in such a hurry. Did you find a solution to the matter of the shark pearl? Noble consort Zhang stretched out her sharp pinky and lightly touched her face that was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as the moon. However, the little girl's exceptionally gifted and icy face suddenly flashed before her eyes. Damn it! It really was a delicate and alluring little face. It inexplicably gave one the urge to ruthlessly destroy this face. This lowly one deserves to die, this lowly one deserves to die. Qi Ming repeatedly kowtowed and said, ever since this lowly one caught a group of merfolk at the Dark Sea tributary near Five Moon City last time but was let off by a D*MN girl for no reason, they haven't been on the island since. The mermaids and mermen have not come ashore recently, they are all very vigilant. Trash. Consort Zhang picked up a small vase with gold-patterned flowers and smashed it at Qi Ming's head. Qi Ming didn't dare to dodge and took the hit head-on. A bloody mark immediately appeared on his forehead. The second manager hastily prostrated himself and repeatedly kowtowed, shouting, Consort Zheng, spare my life. Consort Zheng, spare my life. Xiao Xiao still has something to report. Speak. Consort Zheng was so angry that her head hurt. She felt extremely uncomfortable when she thought about how she didn't have the shark pearl powder to nourish her face. Yes, yes, yes. This lowly one came today because this lowly one heard a piece of news from the people. It was said that a merchant's family had obtained a rare beautifying pill. After taking it, it can improve the quality of the skin. The effect is very magical. Consort Zheng's brows twitched slightly, and she waved at Qi Ming. Qi Ming crawled forward like a dog, laughing heartily. He leaned in front of Consort Zheng and whispered to her about this family. Noble Consort Zhang was already paranoid about her own beauty, so upon hearing that it was a pill that could improve her skin, her entire face lit up. Ever since she saw that fresh and tender little girl, she was quite dissatisfied with her body that she was so proud of. He always felt that his delicate skin was completely incomparable to that young lady's. That young lady's skin was truly delicate and natural. She did not apply anything. Because of this, it made him feel even more jealous and hateful. The beauty that she had been pursuing all her life had been completely trampled on by a little girl of 14 or 15 years of age in a single encounter. Qi Ming, if you can handle this matter well, I'll give you a piece of my mind. I will definitely reward you handsomely. Noble consort Zheng's lips curled up in satisfaction as she smiled charmingly. This lowly one will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire for imperial consort. Imperial consort. Imperial consort. A palace maid hurriedly ran in. Seeing that Qi Ming was present, she couldn't help but hesitate. Consort Zhang glanced at Qi Ming and waved her hand. You may leave first. Do your job well. Yes, this lowly one will take his leave. Qi Ming smiled flatteringly and hurriedly got up and tactfully left. Chapter 613. Your Highness. That palace maid eagerly came forward and sang her praises. This servant just received a message. The crown princess traveled through the night and seems to be carrying something. She's heading towards the reverend chamber of the two priestesses at an incredible speed. It looks like she's in a very aggressive mood. Consort Zhang was slightly stunned and blurted out, "That fast? I don't know if Priestess Huang will be able to handle it." The palace maid pursed her lips. TCH, if she can't even handle a little girl, then just let her be. Consort Zhang still couldn't help but frown. She doesn't know how to handle things at all. Fortunately, Your Highness is quick-witted and removed yourself from this matter. I doubt that Priestess Huang would dare to speak carelessly. The palace maid smugly tugged at the corner of her mouth. Go to the reverend chamber again and investigate the situation. Yes, this servant will go right away. The palace maid walked out the door with small steps. Your Highness, if you let that girl Kaling go to the reverend chamber to investigate, wouldn't it be bad if she coincidentally bumped into the crown princess? Mammy Su said in a low voice. Humph. A little girl dares to be impudent in front of this consort? It's all that Priestess Huang's fault for not knowing how to handle things properly. She was caught so quickly. Consort Zhang was completely in a bad mood and kicked away the two palace maids who were massaging her legs. The two palace maids were bare-faced and submissive. Their hair was coiled into two buns and they weren't wearing any ornaments or accessories. Consort Zhang walked over to the table with her slender, half-exposed legs. An old mama supported her slender, jade-like hand as she walked towards the table. Suddenly, she stopped in her tracks and shouted at a palace maid who was passing by. Stop. The palace maid was holding half a painting in her hands and walking past with a smile on her face. Her young face without any makeup instantly burned Consort Zheng's eyes. Noble Consort Zhang glanced to the side, and Nanny Su sighed faintly on the side. Two eunuchs, who were like wolves and tigers, walked over and clamped down on that royal maid's arms. Ignoring that royal maid's screams, they dragged her outside. The half-drawn scroll in the palace maid's hand fell to the ground with a crash. Her eyes widened in fear, and her small mouth was suddenly covered by a eunuch's palm. She moaned as she was dragged to a small room at the side. A cold light flashed through Consort Zheng's eyes. She reprimanded arrogantly, "You must be up to something if you dare to laugh so lowly. Cut off her little face and feed it to the wild dogs." Woo-woo. The palace maid didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy before two eunuchs grabbed her by the arms and covered her mouth, dragging her to a small room to be dealt with. Soon, ear-piercing screams could be heard from the small room. Not long after, two vicious eunuchs dragged out the palace maid whose face was completely unrecognizable. There was not a single piece of flesh on her face that was intact. They threw her directly onto a broken cart and dragged her out of the palace. They're all sluts. Consort Zhang pinched her fingers and curled her thin lips. Did they think that there would be a second shrew like Yunyang who would take advantage of loopholes? They all need to be taught a lesson. This consort's head hurts a bit. Help me to rest. Noble Consort Zhang swayed her slender waist as she gracefully walked into the bedchamber with Nanny Su's hand, who was silently bending her waist, holding onto it. However, she didn't know that the consequences of darling Qiao, that jinx, being stepped on by someone's tail were quite serious. Chapter 614. Two Jie Yuans lived in each of the east and west rooms of the classics reverence chamber. Born in the Marquis Yenwei estate, Jie Yu Lu had always been plagued with illness. She basically spent most of the year recuperating in the east room of the classics reverence chamber, so she rarely participated in banquets. As for Jie Yu Huang, it was said that she was outstanding in singing and dancing when she was young. Otherwise, she wouldn't have received the great king's favor and been conferred the title of Jie Yu as a mere county magistrate's daughter. However, as she grew older in recent years, the number of beauties by the great king's side also increased, so she slowly received the cold shoulder. When Abba first heard the level 12 mystic cultivator mention the classics reverence chamber's old nanny, she didn't have the slightest impression of her. She was also baffled when Jie Yu Huang was mentioned. She had never interacted with this Jie Yu before, nor did she have any enmity with her. Was her brain damaged to kidnap her mother and younger sister at Dongshan Gate? She absolutely didn't believe that there was no one behind this. Going to the classics reverence chamber to find Jie Yu Huang was one reason, and forcing the instigator out of her mouth was another. She only had these two objectives. She still wanted to escape unscathed after touching her mother and younger sister? That was truly too naive. It was already 10 minutes into the night. The two masters of the classics reverence chamber had also washed up and planned to go to bed. But at this time, a loud noise came from the west room's roof. The sound of falling tiles and bricks instantly broke the silence of the night. Jie Yu, who had just laid down on the bed, quivered and abruptly sat up. For some reason, ever since she accepted the work arranged by Her Highness the noble consort, her heart had been in turmoil, and her eyelids hadn't stopped twitching the entire night. At this time, hearing the loud noise from the eaves, she was somewhat stupefied and hastily shouted toward the outer courtyard, someone quickly come. Go and see what happened." Bang! A ball-shaped person was kicked in from outside and rolled several times on the ground. Her head hit the wooden clothes rack in the bedroom and she cried out in pain. Her eyes rolled back, and she was about to faint. Who dares to trespass into this Jie Yu's bedroom? Jie Yu Huang put on a brave front and climbed down from the bed. She angrily shouted, her eyes wide open. Dong! Accompanied by a muffled groan, a heavy object fell to the ground. Abba's small face slowly emerged from the dim light. His cold eyes fell on beautiful Huang, who was only wearing a white undergarment. "Do you still recognize this person?" She kicked the level 12 mystic cultivator who was groaning softly on the ground. The level 12 mystic cultivator exerted a bit of strength on his toes and flipped his face in front of pure Huang, revealing his ghastly pale true appearance to her. Jie Yu Huang exclaimed and took a step back, trembling. There was no doubt that she had accepted it. Qiao Mu was immediately angered to the point of laughter, and she coldly ordered, "Smash this ghastly place that harbors filth for me." Screech! Qing Wan circled in the sky and abruptly swooped down after receiving its little master's order. A mouthful of icicles sprayed down from the west wing's eaves, instantly slicing off half of the eaves. Boom! The earth-shattering noise completely alarmed the royal guards patrolling outside the high walls. However, because they didn't have a transfer order, the captain of the royal guards didn't have the authority to set foot in the harem for the time being. He could only lead a team of people to watch from the other side of the wall and look at each other in dismay. That noise just now was truly too loud. It seemed to have come from the classics reverence chamber. However, Chapter 615. Following that, 5 to 6 consecutive explosions alarmed the entire capital from top to bottom. At this moment, the old king was currently reprimanding his second son in the royal study through the night with a dark expression. The second prince knelt at the old king's feet and sang a wonderful song to express his loyalty to his royal father and the entire Mo kingdom. He was just short of vomiting blood to act it out. Suddenly, he was alarmed by the loud explosions. The great king immediately jumped up from his seat and shouted angrily, "What's going on?" "Great king!" The steward eunuch, Gong Chong-en, rolled in from the outside. His face was pale as he anxiously said, Great king, it's not good." I don't know how Pure Huang provoked the Crown Princess, but the Crown Princess brought such a huge mystical bird into the Reverend Canon Hall in the middle of the night. Right now, she's angrily smashing Pure Huang's Reverend Canon Hall. What? The great king immediately jumped up from the ground. With his hands behind his back and a solemn expression, he angrily rebuked, "Ridiculous! Ridiculous! Hurry and pass down my orders. Mobilize the royal guards to the Reverend Canon Hall and stop the Crown Princess from causing trouble." Father, father. The second prince felt that he hadn't finished his performance yet, but he saw his father leave with a solemn expression. How could this be? He had to make things clear today. Otherwise, who knew what kind of changes would happen tomorrow? Scram! The great king was furious. He directly threw a stack of letters at the second prince's face. These letters were all personally written by you. How could there be a mistake? You greedy, stupid thing. From today onwards, you'd better reflect on your actions in the second prince's residence. Until you admit your mistakes. From today onwards, the second prince's residence will be cut off for 3 months. The great king angrily rebuked and strode out the door. The second prince was left paralyzed on the ground. He didn't even know how he left his father's study in a daze. On the other side, Pure Lu was also alarmed. She sent someone to take a look and returned to report that the Crown Princess had come knocking. Pure Lu was dumbfounded. She didn't attend the palace banquet today, so she didn't have the chance to see the Crown Princess. Just as she was about to get up and take a look, the old nanny beside her hurriedly dissuaded her. "Pure Lu, it's better if you don't go. There's a fierce fight outside right now. If you go, what if you bump into something? Wouldn't you be implicated for no reason? That Huang Jie was usually arrogant and didn't put anyone in her eyes. She deserved it. Humph. Just let the Crown Prince Consort teach her a lesson so that she won't think that she's the only one in this palace apart from the noble consort." Nanny Zhang, ahem. Jeyu Lu coughed again. "Hurry and close the doors and windows." Nanny Zhang anxiously shouted and hastily helped Pure Lu lie down. "Pure Lu, listen to this old one. It's better if you don't go. It's cold and windy outside. Hurry and don't get involved in this muddy water." At this time, Pure Lu trembled in fear as if she had just been fished out of water. Her eyes were fixed on the Crown Princess' foot as she crushed the level 12 mystic cultivator. The Crown Princess was like a monster descending upon the world. Separated by the flickering candlelight, she crushed the level 12 mystic cultivator's spine inch by inch. "If you don't speak, you'll be the same as this person. Your Highness the Crown Princess, spare my life." Pure Lu knelt with a plop. All of this was ordered by Her Highness the noble consort. I, a tiny Pure Lu, didn't dare to disobey. "Bring me there." Arbor shouted angrily and directly picked up the trembling Pure Lu. With a whoosh, he left the Classics Reverence Hall and headed straight for the noble consort's Sephora Flower Palace. Chapter 616. Shriek. Qingwan angrily rebuked and directly rained down hailstones, smashing the Classics Reverence House's west wing into smithereens. Only then did it contentedly spread its wings and chase after its little master with a whoosh. When Nanny Zhang heard the commotion outside gradually dwindle, she finally sighed in relief. She raised her embroidered handkerchief to wipe her sweat before hastily instructing the junior royal maid beside her to go investigate. When Jeyu Lu and Nanny Zhang returned, they heard that the entire west wing had been smashed to smithereens without a single intact brick or tile to be seen. The two of them looked at each other in bewilderment, completely at a loss for words. Arbor carried Jeyu Huang in one hand and that level 12 mystic cultivator in the other as he made a beeline for Sephora Flower Palace. There were actually 7 to 8 junior royal maids guarding Sephora Flower Palace's entrance, and the posture of a noble consort was quite proper. How could Arbor pay attention to them? He directly leaped over the wall with the person in hand. Who dares to trespass into Sephora Flower Palace? A burst of mystic energy directly shot up from the ground towards her. Heh! Arbor sneered. With a flick of his sleeve, he swept this mystic energy away. With a boom, it slammed into a stone stool in the small garden, immediately blasting a small and exquisite stone stool into smithereens. The expression of the royal maid who attacked turned apprehensive, and her entire body involuntarily shuddered. Mammy Sue had just helped Consort Zheng lie down when Consort Zheng knitted her brows and shouted, "Who's making a ruckus outside?" Bang! A loud noise rang out. The 4 doors of Sephora Flower Palace's bedchamber were simultaneously smashed open by an enormous burst of mystic energy, turning into piles of rotten wood that fell to the ground in disarray. Consort Zheng's eyes widened as she abruptly threw off the cotton blanket covering her body. Just as she ran barefoot off the bed, she was met with a gust of cold air. "You impudent!" Consort Zheng's entire body trembled as she stared wide-eyed at the young lady striding over. The young lady's ice-cold appearance was like a jade statue carved in this snowy night, without the slightest hint of a smile on her face. Bam! How could Xiao Mu care about noble Consort Zheng's hooting? She went up and directly kicked her backwards. Consort Zheng was caught off guard. Her hair was disheveled as she was kicked to the side of the bed. She stumbled and missed a step. She sprained her ankle and almost fell to the ground. With great difficulty, she reached out to hold the edge of the bed and bent over. Her pretty face was flushed with anger and her eyes were filled with rage. It was as if blood was about to drip out. "Crown Prince Consort, you are too daring and presumptuous." Noble Consort Zheng shouted furiously, her entire body trembling non-stop from her fury. Like a protective little beast, Xiao Mu jumped in front of noble Consort Zheng with a whoosh. Her icy lips tugged up as she scoffed, "You think one kick is too much? Then, can you handle what's coming next?" Slap. A heavy slap landed on Consort Zheng's cheek. Consort Zheng only felt pain on her face. It took her a while to realize that she had been slapped by the crown princess. A mere crown princess. How dare she? How dare she? Someone come quickly. Consort Zheng was completely mad with anger. Her long hair was disheveled and draped over her face. Veins popped out on her forehead like a malicious spirit. "Take her down. Take this slut down. Or I'm going to put this slut to death by 1,000 cuts, then kill all 9 generations of her family." Consort Zheng was going crazy. She was completely driven mad by Arbor. She had commanded the entire harem for so many years and had always been doted on by the great king. Who dared to treat her like this? She was kicked and slapped. She was Consort Zheng. Chapter 617. Yong he wants to put our crown princess to death by 1,000 cuts. She even wants to execute her entire clan? Does that mean that our clan will be executed as well? Even royal father and royal mother will be executed? What a majestic presence indeed. A cold voice came from outside the broken gate. The crown prince was dressed in a plain red coronet, and his gaze was as cold as a blade. There wasn't a trace of warmth in his gaze as he stared coldly at Consort Zheng. Young he had been muddle-headed from anger at the time, but now that she thought about it, disaster really came from careless talk. Her entire body quivered as she came to her senses. This concubine didn't mean that. Consort Zheng couldn't swallow her anger at all as she glared coldly at Arbor with her venomous eyes. At this moment, Mammy Sue straightened her back and bowed. She braved the danger of being put to death by 1,000 cuts by the Crown Prince and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, the Crown Prince's late-night visit to Sephora Flower Palace is indeed improper. Just now, Her Highness made a slip of the tongue, so I hope Your Highness the Crown Prince won't take it to heart." The Crown Prince's icy gaze landed on Mammy Sue. "What do you think your noble consort's disgusting powdered face is worth looking at? Our clan is here to pick up our Crown Princess. Wherever our Crown Princess is, our clan will be there. A tiny Sephora Flower Palace wants to block our path? Our clan can order people to smash your Sephora Flower Palace to pieces with just a few words. Someone, Drag this old hag out and beat her to death." Two pitch-black figures immediately appeared beside the trembling Mammy Sue. The Crown Prince's cold voice said indifferently, "Seeing Young-hee, it's time for our servants and palace maids to be replaced. They've all been raised to the point where they can't tell who's the master and who's the servant. Drag her out. An eyesore." "No, no, no. Your Highness, please forgive my reverend mother. She didn't mean it, she didn't mean to contradict your Highness." Consort Zheng immediately panicked. She rushed forward and hugged Mammy Sue's waist. This was an old nanny who had been by her side for so many years. Usually, she relied on this nanny to give her advice and ideas. She had followed her into the palace since Legay Courtyard, and followed her from a young Young-hee to a meteoric rise to become Consort Zheng's personal nanny. If Mammy Sue was killed by the Crown Prince, it was undeniable that Consort Zheng's arm would be broken. It would be excruciatingly painful. The Crown Prince stepped forward and held Aber's small hand. He coldly glanced at the two guards in black. "What? You can't even drag a weak old woman?" "Yes." The hidden guard's entire body trembled, and he hastily exerted more strength, directly pushing aside the incessantly crying noble Consort Zheng and throwing her to the side. He then dragged Nanny Sue, whose eyes were flickering continuously, outside. Suddenly, a powerful mystic energy exploded from Mammy Sue's body, and she abruptly pushed aside one of the guards. The Crown Prince's lips curled slightly. He raised his finger, and 5 streaks of fire shot towards Mammy Sue's face like crafty little snakes. "The Great King has arrived!" The eunuchs and palace maids who had rolled into a pile outside the palace hurriedly cried out, "Great King! Great King! Hurry and save Her Highness the noble consort. Her Highness the noble consort is about to be beaten to death by the Crown Princess." Ah! How could Mammy Sue resist Emolien's fire spirit? She was hit head-on by a beam of fire. Her entire body flew up and fiercely crashed into the flower caltrop cabinet. Bang! After a loud sound, the flower caltrop cabinet exploded, and the falling pieces of wood buried Nanny Sue in a messy manner. "Nonsense, nonsense!" The Great King angrily berated, "Why aren't you stopping?" Chapter 6:18. Consort Zheng, who was shouting, Mammy Sue," suddenly turned around and threw herself at the old Great King with tears streaming down her face. "Great King! This concubine doesn't know what wrong I've done to deserve such humiliation from the Crown Princess." She sobbed uncontrollably, and her palm-sized face was as delicate and alluring as raindrops on a banana leaf. Aber expressionlessly stepped forward and kicked the trembling Pure Huang in front of the Great King. That kick was so nimble that the Great King, Gong Chong-en, and the other Imperial Guardsmen couldn't help but twitch their mouths. "Ah! Great King! Great King! Save me, Great King!" Pure Huang trembled all over as she scrambled to hug the old Great King's leg. "What the hell is going on?" The Great King watched his 2 concubines cry so miserably, and his old face almost couldn't hold it together. "Huang Jieyu has already confessed," Aber expressionlessly said with a stoic face. "It was Young-hee who sent a dozen people to kidnap my mother and younger sister outside Dongshan Gate. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. I naturally have to find the mastermind behind the scenes to settle things. As the saying goes, if there's a grudge, then there's a grudge, and there's a grudge. I presume that the Great King is reasonable and won't stop me from taking revenge for kidnapping my mother and sister." The Great King glared at Consort Zheng. Consort Zheng promptly knelt down and sobbed softly. "Great King, how could this concubine do such a thing? This concubine simply doesn't know what the Crown Princess is talking about. Why would this concubine kidnap her mother and younger sister? What grudge or enmity does this concubine have with the Marquis of Jiyuan that this concubine must do such a thing after the small banquet? So you're saying that you won't admit it?" Qiao Mu coldly curled her lips as she swept her gaze towards the uncontrollably trembling Pure Huang. "I didn't do anything. Even if you are the high and mighty Crown Princess, you can't force this concubine to admit to something I didn't do." Noble Consort Zhang insisted that she hadn't done it before, so she couldn't help but sneer in her mind. This little lass still wants to fight with me? This time, I'll let you know that it's useless to just open your mouth and bite. Can you produce any evidence? What a joke. What do you have to say? The great king's face darkened as he glared at Huang Jieyu. Shivering, Huang Jieyu raised her head and saw Consort Zhang shooting a piercing cold glare at her from the corner of her eye. Her whole body shivered and she immediately sobered up. She knew better than anyone what kind of person Consort Zhang was. If she dared to bite her in front of the great king, even if she managed to survive today, she definitely wouldn't be able to survive tomorrow or the day after, and her entire family would definitely suffer. Chapter 619. How could I not hold back against you bunch of demons and monsters? Could it be that you two really think that I don't have evidence? That I'll let you casually accuse me in front of the great king? As soon as Aba's cold voice fell, pure Jade Huang couldn't help but tremble all over. She cast a panicked glance at Consort Zheng, but was fiercely glared back at by the imperial consort. Calm down. Don't be caught by a few words from this little girl. Consort Zheng's sharp gaze swept over pure Jade Huang as she thought to herself, what kind of concrete evidence could a damned little girl have? I'm afraid that you've never known that there's something called a listening talisman in this world. Aba turned over her finger, revealing a white jade tablet that was as thick as 3 fingers. I'll let you listen to what you said to me just now. Aba's cold words left pure Jade Huang's body, as if someone had sucked all the strength out of her body, and she suddenly collapsed to the ground. What kind of person was this crown prince consort? How could she be so meticulous? Why didn't she leave her any way out? This listening talisman wasn't drawn by Aba. With her current talisman power, it was impossible for her to draw talisman characters on the jade tablet. Of course, even if she learned how to make a listening talisman, with her pragmatic nature, she probably wouldn't draw such a useless talisman. This very rare jade talisman was coincidentally found in a shop in Anshan Town when she and her parents escaped from the village and headed for Anshan Town. She had always thrown it in a corner of Paradise Planet, occasionally taking it out to study it until the 4th piece of the Golden Talisman Jade Tome was opened. She vaguely knew that this jade tablet was likely a jade talisman sealed with a special talisman power. The talisman master who drew this jade talisman had very profound talisman power. She used her own talisman power to open the talisman and spent a lot of effort. Afterwards, she studied it many times and found that this should be a very rare listening talisman. There was also a passage recorded in the jade talisman. Of course, after she memorized it, she naturally erased it. This listening talisman could now be used by her. This kind of jade talisman was usually sold to wealthy people. Legend has it that there was a prince who loved the voice of a prostitute. He bought 10 jade talismans for listening to music and asked the prostitute to play the zither and sing. Each jade talisman was engraved with the woman's voice. Thus, every day, the prince would excitedly hide in a secluded place and quietly listen to the music of the female singers, intoxicated by it day and night. In the end, when his valiant wife found out about this, she immediately ordered hundreds of servants to smash the brothel into smithereens. She even dragged the singer out of the brothel and beat her up on the street. From then on, her face was disfigured to the point that even her parents couldn't recognize her. Other than that, the jade talisman had no other practical uses. But in reality, it could still come in handy occasionally, such as now. Aba's finger lightly brushed over the jade talisman, and the level 12 mystic cultivator's pained voice was heard. It was the classics Reverence Chambers' virtuous Huang, the old nanny beside her, who contacted me. She wanted me to control Madame Chow and Second Miss first, then think of a way to transfer them out of the capital and find a place to sell them. Emolien's eyes were overflowing with anger, and she kicked virtuous Huang. Do you have anything else to say? Soon, virtuous Huang's trembling voice was heard again. It was Her Highness the noble consort's orders. I'm just a small virtuous jade, so I don't dare to disobey. Chapter 620. In this palace, I'm afraid that only you, Yung He, are worthy of the title of noble consort. Aba's cold gaze shifted to Consort Zheng, causing her to shiver for no reason. Consort Zheng couldn't help but be inwardly alarmed. This little girl had already dug a hole long ago and was waiting for them to jump in before lazily taking out the evidence in her hands. How could she be so scheming? Was this still a 14 or 15-year-old girl? It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this kind of scheming person was someone who had decades of experience. Jung Hee, what else do you have to say? Mo Lien angrily rebuked, then suddenly pulled out a slender, jet-black sword and pointed it at Consort Zheng. You vicious woman! How did my mother-in-law and the others offend you? You're actually so vicious as to want to sell them off? Consort Zheng's pupils abruptly contracted and she hurriedly rolled to the great king's feet. She hugged the great king's leg and cried in a delicate voice, Great King I really didn't know about this. How could you push this onto me just based on a few words from little sister Huang? Handsome Huang! Consort Zheng cried to the heavens as she turned around and angrily shouted at handsome Huang, How could you be so shameless? You're randomly pinning some unrelated matter onto this consort. Speak. Why did you do this? Consort Zheng's beautiful eyes revealed a vicious glint as she looked at handsome Huang. Her thin lips moved slightly as she faintly spat out a person's name. Handsome Huang's shoulders immediately collapsed. She was like a doll that had been poked by someone as her entire body went limp and weak on the ground. That was her father's name. Consort Zheng was using her entire family's lives to threaten her. This woman's methods were extremely vicious. If she didn't continue acting as she said today, her entire family would definitely be slaughtered tomorrow. Handsome Huang finally felt a deep sense of regret at this moment. Why? Why was she so stupid? Why did she have to get involved in this mess between the crown princess and Consort Zheng? Wouldn't it have been better to learn from Jiu Lu and live a peaceful life in the classics' Reverend Hall? She had to learn from others at her age and still fight for favor. She even had the delusion that she could gain the favor of the great king by relying on noble consort. Pathetic. 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 Handsome Huang clenched her teeth and hardened her heart as she looked at the old great king, then suddenly stood up and slammed her head against a nearby pillar. I did all of this. It was me who was jealous of Her Highness the Crown Prince Consort. She was high and mighty and was doted on by the Crown Prince. It's me who wants to deal with the Crown Prince Consort and make her suffer. And because I have a grudge with the Imperial concubine, I decided to push the blame to the Imperial concubine. It's me. It's all me. It's of these things of pigs. I should atone for my sins with my death. I hope that the great king will let me take responsibility for my own actions and not implicate my family. Boom. Handsome Huang hardened her heart and slammed her head against the pillar. She died immediately, so fast that no one could react. Aba couldn't help but frown deeply. In the inner court of the imperial palace, there was really one thing after another. Consort Zheng hugged the great king's leg and gently exhaled. She stole a glance at Aba, her bright red lips slightly raised as she gave Aba a provocative look. All of a sudden, Mo Lien abruptly moved, and the long sword in his hand slashed towards noble Consort Zheng's neck without any explanation. Consort Zheng was so scared that her face turned pale. She scrambled into the great king's arms and said in a trembling voice, Great King, Great King! His Highness the Crown Prince wants to kill his concubine mother. Chapter 621. Killing a wicked person like you who brings calamity to the country is to punish evil and punish evil. To uphold the righteous path. Mo Lien's sword was already at Consort Zheng's neck like a bolt of lightning. Consort Zheng shrieked and squeezed desperately into the great king's arms. She felt a chill on the back of her head, and when she touched it with her hand, she realized that a strand of her hair had been severed by the sword chi. Consort Zheng nearly fainted as she hugged the great king tightly and wailed, Great King, save me, Great King! The great king hurriedly hugged his beloved consort and reached out to shake her frantically. He repeatedly shouted, My king! My king! Oh, my king! Emolien's expression darkened as she coldly glared at her old father who was blocking her. "Move aside. Everyone. Great Crown Prince, there's something wrong with your tone." "My king." The great king hurriedly pushed his beloved consort behind him and tried to smooth things over. "Put your sword away, put it away, put it away. Put it away and speak, my king." The great king shielded consort Zheng and retreated a few steps. Then, he felt that he was a little cowardly in front of his son and daughter-in-law, so he quickly puffed out his chest and rebuked angrily. "Ridiculous! Crown Prince, how can you draw your sword at your concubine mother for no reason? You're really too. In any case, put your sword away for us right now. Hurry!" Seeing that Emolien was unmoved, the great king couldn't maintain his composure any longer and hurriedly ran forward. Emolien could only put away his sword with an indescribable expression when he saw this muddle-headed royal father of his who was charging straight into his sword. "My king. That's right, if there's anything, let's talk about it openly. We're all family, so there's nothing to hide." The great king heaved a sigh of relief and turned to look at the crown princess, whose expression was bone-chillingly cold and without a trace of warmth. Cough. The great king was at a loss for words as he looked at her expressionless face. With great difficulty, he organized his words and said in a low voice, "Crown Princess, you've seen it for yourself. Huang Jieyu has already admitted her guilt. She admitted that she sent people to kidnap your mother and sister and slandered the imperial concubine. This matter has nothing to do with my beloved concubine, so let's just drop it." Abba coldly glanced at the great king and walked out without saying a word. The great king's heart skipped a beat. He felt that his daughter-in-law's condescending gaze just now was simply too stifling. Screech. The Qingwan that pounced down from the sky made all the hairs on the imperial army's body stand on end. They entered a state of full alert. "Smash this filthy place for me!" Qiao Mu shouted angrily. Qingwan suddenly spat out a mouthful of frost towards consort Zheng's bedroom. Suddenly, like a hailstorm, all of it rushed down. The entire roof was smashed into a sieve by this terrifying gust of wind, snow, and frost. Rubble fell from the holes in the roof. The imperial army hastily protected the great king and the imperial concubine as they rushed out of the bedroom. The crown princess leaped onto Qingwan's back and looked down on the common people. Her voice was unprecedentedly cold and frigid. "Yong-hee, today, I'll give the crown prince face and let you off. If you do it again in the future, I don't care if you're the heavenly emperor or the 6 prefectures and 3 prefectures, I want your entire family to die without a burial ground. Just like this palace." Boom. As her voice fell, consort Zheng was at a loss for what to do. Her eyes bulged as she looked behind her. She saw that the perfectly fine Sephora Flower Palace's main hall and bedroom had been completely pulverized in a matter of seconds and turned into rubble. The old great king clutched his chest in shock. Chapter 622. Lord Father, look after your concubine well. Don't make a single mistake. Emolien coldly threw down these words and leaped to the little fellow's side. She raised her hands to pull her into her embrace and patted her comfortingly. Qingwan let out a long cry and then flapped its huge wings, carrying the crown prince and crown princess back to the eastern palace. Consort Zhang only dared to let out a long sigh of relief when she saw that the two were far away. She delicately laid in the great king's embrace and cried, "Great King Ah! Look at that crown prince. Even his concubine is so arrogant and insufferably arrogant. He doesn't put Chenxie in his eyes at all. That's how that couple tortures me, their concubine mother, Ah. Wu, great king, you have to uphold justice for Chenxie Ah. Great king." The old great king's head hurt from her noise and a trace of anger appeared in his eyes. He fiercely shook off Yong-hee's hand and flung her to the ground. "Don't think that this humble one doesn't know what you've done. This humble one was giving you face in front of the crown princess just now." The old great king angrily reprimanded, "That Huang Jieyu is clearly one of your people. You still won't admit it? Look at what kind of foolish thing you've done. Ah. Why did you go and capture the crown princess's mother and sister for no reason? Ah. You're just looking for trouble. If it wasn't for little 15's sake, this humble one wouldn't have bothered to save you just now. This humble one just doesn't want little 15 to lose her mother's care at such a young age. Great King. I'm innocent. Ah. Great King. Consort Zhang cried until tears fell like pear blossoms, her delicate body trembling. She walked a few steps on her knees and knelt in front of the old Great King as she cried, Great King. No matter what, Chenxie is still the crown prince and crown princess's concubine mother. How can they treat me like this? Disrespecting one's concubine mother is unfilial. The crown prince and the crown princess were the role models of the world, the people of the crown prince and crown princess. How could they disregard etiquette, justice, integrity, and honor and do this to their stepmother? Great King, Chenxie's reputation has been completely swept to the ground by the crown princess's antics. How am I supposed to help Her Majesty manage the 6 palaces in the future? Then there's no need for you to help. The Great King waved his hand and shouted angrily. In an instant, Consort Zheng's voice was drowned out. She raised her teary eyes and stared blankly at the old Great King, as if she didn't understand what the old Great King meant. Men, draft the decree. Madame Zhang did not respect the crown prince and was spoiled and rude. Due to her immoral conduct, she will be demoted to Consort Zheng from today onwards. She was stripped of her right to manage the 6 palaces and temporarily handed it over to He Jiaoyi. I hope that Consort Zhang will properly repent in the palace and not take half a step out of the palace without our orders for a month. After saying this, the old Great King turned around in a huff and was about to leave. Consort Zhang almost fainted on the ground, but Mammy Su, who had hurried over, supported her body. Consort Zhang wept to the heavens as she hugged the Great King's leg and repeatedly shouted, Great King, Great King! Please retract your orders, Great King. Chenxie knows her wrongs, Great King. Great King. Although Chenxie is in the wrong, is the crown princess not in the wrong? She flouted the palace rules and barged into Chenxie's Sephora Flower Palace and smashed the bedchamber into pieces. How can this kind of crown princess shoulder the heavy burden of being the nation's future mother? Great King, Great King. The old Great King was so angry that he kicked Consort Zheng away and said angrily, If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. You clearly knew that the husband and wife weren't to be trifled with, so why did you insist on arguing with them? It's great now. You've made a big fuss and become a laughingstock in court. You better properly stay in Sephora Flower Palace and reflect on yourself. Don't come out if you haven't realized your wrongs. Chapter 623. The Great King was so angry that he didn't even mention the 1-month deadline. It was as if he wanted to banish Consort Zheng to the cold palace and keep her in Sephora Flower Palace to reflect on her actions. Mammy Su shuddered in fright when she heard the meaning behind the Great King's words. She hastily crawled forward to cover Consort Zheng's mouth and dissuaded her in a low voice. Your Highness, don't say any more, Your Highness. Your Highness, quickly kowtow and express your gratitude. Consort Zheng finally fainted. When the news reached the Queen's central palace, it was already past midnight. The Queen hastily got up to change her clothes and was about to visit the Crown Prince in the Eastern Palace, but she was stopped by the Mama by her side. Consort Zheng has been demoted to Consort Zheng, Your Highness. Her personal Mama, Hua Xian, pursed her lips and said with a smile, This Crown Princess is really something. Sigh, that child Wang I don't even know where he found such a wife. That stoic face really worries me to death. The Queen sighed. This child of mine has always been willful and unbridled in front of his father. This is great. He married a wife who's even more willful and unbridled than him. The days from now on are going to be lively. Her personal palace maid, Hexiang, giggled and consoled the Queen. The Crown Prince and Crown Princess are both sentimental people. The Great King must know this. The Queen pointed at Hexiang and laughed along. Mama, look at this mouth of Hexiang's. She's clearly just being willful and unbridled, but in her mouth, it becomes a compliment. What sentimental person, ha ha ha. Sigh. Your Highness, the children and grandchildren will have their own fortune. This old servant feels that you shouldn't meddle in this matter tonight. The old mama said, the great king must still be in a fit of anger right now. This servant also heard that the great king summoned the second prince to the imperial study at 10 o'clock tonight. The old mama lowered her voice and whispered into Empress Zhao's ear. The queen nodded. This consort Zheng is really strange. Why was she so impatient to make a move on the crown princess's mother and sister at Dongshan Gate? This doesn't match her usual cautious demeanor. This servant heard that His Highness the Crown Prince even affectionately called the Crown Princess's mother. His Highness and the Crown Princess escorted them all the way out of the second gate, but for some reason, they were ambushed at Dongshan Gate. When the Queen heard this, she immediately snorted. I don't usually see that child being so intimate with me. The maids covered their mouths and snickered. The King Princess's mothers, Consort Zheng shunned to sleep. Right. This is. As the court officials who were well informed naturally received the news as well, and they clicked their tongues in amazement. From what they knew, Consort Zheng had enjoyed unfailing favor for many years. Who would have thought that she would be so unlucky tonight when she met the Crown Princess? Even her Shocked by the change in the court's direction, the officials all sent letters to their sons at home, earnestly warning them not to mention it. After Arbor returned to the Eastern Palace, although her face was expressionless, Emolien knew that she was still angry. Emolien raised his hand and called, Supper. This servant is here. Didn't you say that Yong he summoned the Zheng estate's second steward today? Go find out what's his cause. The Crown Prince ordered. Yes. This servant will go immediately. Darling, don't be angry. We'll secretly take revenge. Emolien hugged his little wife and stroked her hair. I'll write you a monthly ticket tomorrow. Chapter 624. I've already sent people to send mother and second sister back to the Chao estate. They also suffered a bit of a fright today, so let them rest well. We'll visit them tomorrow, Emolien said as he hugged his little wife. Jojo, blame me for being careless. I didn't send more people to escort them back. Arbor shook her head. How would you know that Yong he is so unscrupulous that she dared to lay a hand on my mother outside Dongshan Gate? With that, she looked up at the man. Emolien, I won't let her off so easily. Emolien hastily nodded and said, All right. Go ahead and do whatever you want. Since Royal Father is stopping us from touching her, it's the same as taking revenge in secret. I'll have Xiaoyi find out first, then we'll haggle over this further. Only then did Arbor feel a bit better. She nodded and said, This Her Highness Zheng is truly too much of a bully. If she couldn't help but lay a hand on my mother and sister because of a quarrel between us, then she's too narrow-minded. She thinks that you're like those people in the palace, that she can do whatever she wants to you. That's good too. Give her a lesson she'll never forget. Emolien's lips curled into a sneer as he said, Don't let her misunderstand that no one in this world can control her. Jojo, you must be tired from today's torment. Rest early. Oh, that's right. Give me your broken ferrule and Debeo. I'll see if I can repair it. It can be repaired. Arbor's eyes suddenly brightened. It should be possible. Emolien couldn't help but feel very happy when he saw a glimmer of light appear on her face. He raised his hand to pinch her little face and said, I obtained a top-grade material earlier. I reckon that not only can it be repaired, it might even improve by leaps and bounds. What leaps and bounds? Darling Chao was curious. But the Crown Prince didn't say anything and only reached out to tease her little face. You'll know after I give it to you. Okay. Chao Mu was in high spirits as she handed the ferrule and big treasure to Emolien. I'm not in a hurry either. Take your time. I know. Emolien's gaze was deep and gentle. Also, can you make me a wooden club? Usually, when I meet someone who doesn't have eyes, I'll hit him with a wooden club. That way, I won't have to use my ferrule all the time. Xiao Mu suddenly had an idea. The corner of Huifeng's mouth twitched slightly. All right. Sure enough, the Crown Prince agreed without any moral integrity. Do you want to add some thorns to the club? Yes, yes. Add some bobs. It'll definitely feel good to smash it. The little guy's ferocious eyes lit up again. They were as black as two boundless stars. What a strange scene. Huifeng stared at this pair of savage goods in disbelief. They were currently discussing in high spirits how to perfectly forge that club. The little girl was born ferocious, and His Highness had led the little girl astray without knowing it. Did His Highness' conscience not hurt? Let's go. Emolien's voice brought our dear Huifeng back to his senses, and he hurriedly followed the Crown Prince out of the bedchamber. Huifeng, what was that expression on your face earlier? You don't agree with this Crown Prince's actions? The Crown Prince asked calmly. Huifeng really wanted to be like Hidden Flower and fawningly say to His Highness the Crown Prince, "Of course not. This subordinate thinks that everything your Highness does is right." But he really wasn't that shameless, so he could only harumph, "And no, your Highness." The Crown Prince nodded with his hands behind his back. That's the best. If you do, I'll immediately send you away. Chapter 625. Huifeng inexplicably felt a chill on the back of his neck, and he turned to glance at the night. It must be because the night wind has gotten stronger. Your Highness, are we still going back to the study? Emolien turned to glance at the slightly dimmed light in the bedchamber and sighed at the night. Tough life. Who knows when I'll be able to openly enter the room? Your Highness. Huifeng was too embarrassed to ridicule His Highness when he saw how reluctant he was to part with her. My lord, it's just one night of not seeing the little miss. You'll report in on time tomorrow morning. Do you have to make it look like a parting of life and death? Ah, pooh pooh pooh. There's no parting of life and death. Let's go. Emolien listlessly stuffed her hands into her sleeves and pitifully turned to leave. Cold winds blew the entire way, and her back was bleak as she stumbled across a thick layer of snow. Huifeng couldn't help but twitch his mouth as he thought, what am I acting for? The little miss isn't even here. You're acting so well, and the little miss can't see it at all, so she definitely won't keep you. How is the study inconvenient for you? With your cultivation, you can reach the study in 3 seconds if you fly normally. Yet you have to walk like a tortoise, so you have to stagger through the snow. The small bedroom in the study has already been filled with bathing water, filled with charcoal, and brewed with hot tea. What's missing from you? Not long after Emolien left, a crack opened in the bedchamber's window, and Darling Qiao's large eyes peered out from the crack. A trace of snow drifted into her eyes as the cold wind of the snowy night blew. So cold. She narrowed her eyes slightly and closed the window before hopping onto the bed and covering herself with the blankets again. However, she couldn't get the Crown Prince's pitiful back view out of her mind. If it's still snowing too late tomorrow, shouldn't she chase him to the study to sleep? It shouldn't be a problem for him to stay the night, right? She wondered if the study was warm or not. This was his bedchamber to begin with, but she had taken over the magpie's nest the moment she came. Tomorrow. Our dear Xiao Mu hugged the blankets and turned over, curling up and falling asleep in a daze. Early the next morning, Auber was woken up by a series of squeaking noises. He opened his eyes and was momentarily at a loss. 3 thumb-sized black-winged butterflies fluttered towards her. They're back. Xiao Mu immediately opened her blankets and sat up, somewhat sober. Little master, little master. Xiao Zhao's crisp voice rang in her ears. The mansion you asked me to investigate has been bustling with activity these past 2 days. Hurry up and tell me, Auber urged as he put on his clothes. That family has been making a ruckus since the night before yesterday, Xiao Xiao said briskly. First, a thief broke into the mansion and snuck into the study to steal something. He was caught red-handed. Last night, there was even more drama going on. A group of people came to the mansion, saying that they got the news and wanted to catch the big thieves. The one who stole from the study. Yes, that's him. But is it that easy to search the second prince's residence? Arbor was stunned. The residence that she had asked Butterfly to keep an eye on was the second prince's residence. Ha, that official who went to investigate was really arrogant. He said that the big thief stole something from the imperial concubine and came to investigate after getting wind of it. Without any explanation, he searched that person's residence from top to bottom. Xiao smiled happily. Butterfly said that they didn't find anything. That big thief actually disappeared in the end. What a joke. Chapter 626. Arbor's small hand paused in the middle of wiping her face. But she heard that the unlucky second prince had already been detained last night. Xiao chirped. In that whatever prince's study, they found a large stack of letters. Oh, they even caught someone. As they were speaking, Emolienne walked in. Seeing that Arbor was already up, she couldn't help but walk over with smiling eyes. You're up so early. Why aren't you greeting anyone? It's not like I can't take care of myself, Arbor muttered and finished wiping her small face. Emolienne pulled her over. I'll comb your hair. You know how to. No, I'll learn. Forget it. Don't mess around. Arbor hurriedly wanted to call Xiao Yao, but Emolienne pulled her over to sit on a small round stool in front of the mirror. Jojo, it's snowing heavily outside today, and some roads are closed. Let's wait for the snow to stop before going back tomorrow or the day after. It's snowing heavily? The little fellow tilted her head and looked outside, but she couldn't see clearly through the heavy beads and brocade curtains. He turned her small head back and straightened it in front of the mirror, then he combed her hair twice in a decent manner. It's windy and snowing heavily, so let's not go out. Emolienne casually combed her hair into a homey hairstyle. Looking at it in the mirror, it actually looked quite decent. How is it? The man couldn't help but feel a little smug. Arbor glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. What exactly did you do at the second prince's place yesterday? Is that notorious bandit the day before yesterday related to you? How could I be related to that notorious bandit? Emolienne looked innocent and was even a little indignant when talking about this matter. That notorious bandit is quite famous on Seekong Planet. He's called Thief Sage Ding Ting Ding or something. He can steal anything from his target. Arbor couldn't help but twitch her mouth. What Ding Ting Ding? I'm the one who's talking about that. Emolienne simply reached out to hug her and rubbed her head with a grin. It's not Ding Ting Ding. It's Ding Ting Ding. He sat at the table, dipped his finger in the tea, and wrote 3 words. Oh, what did Ding Ting Ding do to make the crown prince so disdainful? Emolienne giggled, hugging her little fellow as she laughed. This Ding Ting Ding almost ruined my plans. I sent someone to put something in second brother's study. Let's write letters. The little guy rolled his eyes. You already know. Emolienne looked down at her. Who knew that Ding Ting Ding had been hiding in second brother's study all this time? Later on, he even deliberately got caught by second brother. Doesn't that mean he witnessed you finding someone to frame the second prince? Arbor's face suddenly turned serious. Emolienne smiled. What do you mean by framing me? Those letters are real. It's just that he wasn't in the study before. Second brother has colluded with a descendant of the West Chiu Kingdom and hid him in the second prince's residence. Later on, Lord Gu found him and caught him red-handed. This can't be wrong. That Lord Gu, how did he happen to receive the news and rush to the second prince's residence? Arbor glanced askance at the crown prince. I just had someone leak the news that Ding Ting Ding was in the second prince's residence. Naturally, someone couldn't sit still and jumped out for me, the crown prince said with a smile. Xiao Yao came in with a row of junior royal maids to set the table. When she saw her 2 masters stuck together again, she couldn't help but cover her mouth in secret amusement. Ding Ting Ding really ran away. He's very good at running. The Crown Prince harumphed, his expression displeased. Chapter 627. Lao, that idiot, really thought he could catch him. But now, Lao won't let this ding-ting-ding go and justified himself in front of royal father, saying that the letters were all ding-ting-ding's doing. It's just that how could his handwriting be fake? Your father is so muddle-headed, he might actually believe it. Arba pursed her lips in exasperation. The Crown Prince chuckled and kissed her on the cheek. Good darling, you shouldn't doubt it. My muddle-headed father has a rather accurate grasp of right and wrong when it comes to major issues. Arba was non-committal. The two of them held hands as they went to eat. Xiaoyao interrupted from the side and said in an indignant tone, Miss, this servant heard that Consort Zhang fell ill from anger. She was in a daze from her illness, but she kept yelling that her chest hurt because of Mississippi. Arba rolled her eyes and drank 2 mouthfuls of porridge with a spoon. What a senseless trick. Didn't the great king order her to reflect on her mistakes behind closed doors? Why did the news still spread? What kind of closed door is this? What mistakes is she reflecting on? That's right. The Crown Prince immediately nodded, fully supporting his wife. Someone, send more people to heavily guard Consort Zheng's Sephora Flower Palace. If you continue to spread false information, I will hold you responsible. Reflecting on her mistakes behind closed doors is such a light punishment, and it's all thanks to your muddle-headed father for punishing her. Arba became a bit angry again as she spoke. Xiaoyao was already used to her Mrs. tone, but none of the royal maids beside her were used to it. Who would criticize the great king in front of the Crown Prince like this? The Crown Princess was truly shockingly bold. However, the Crown Prince and sister Xiaoyao's expressions were boundlessly calm and unperturbed. It was evident that the Crown Princess was already used to shooting her mouth off in front of His Highness the Crown Prince. The group of junior royal maids were all people who acted according to the situation. They all silently warned themselves to keep their mouths shut and look down, not daring to say anything. My lord, Xiao Yi is back. Hui Feng entered to report. Emolienne raised her head and said to the palace maids, You may leave. With the exception of Peony, all of the junior palace maids retreated. Xiao Ye's dark figure appeared at the door like a ghost. He knelt on one knee and bowed, Greetings to the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Get up. The Crown Prince asked anxiously, beckoning him over. How's the investigation going? Just as your highness expected. Xiao Yi said seriously. The second steward of the Zhang estate wouldn't come to the Three Treasures Palace for no reason. He's here to offer medicine to Consort Zhang. It's said that a merchant family obtained a beautifying pill. Now, the second steward of the Zhang estate should be plotting how to get his hands on it. The Zhang family has always been ruthless. The Crown Prince frowned. It's just a tiny beautifying pill. He wouldn't go so far as to kill an entire family for it, right? Arba disdainfully pursed his lips. Hui Feng and Xiao Yi both discreetly glanced at the Crown Princess, only to feel that the little girl's eyes truly revealed a thick sense of disdain and mockery. That was because she looked down on this beautifying pill, right? It's hard to say, Crown Princess. The Zhang estate's actions have always been ruthless, just as your highness said. In order to curry favor with Consort Zhang, they'll do anything, Xiaoyao hastily said. Emolienne, I have a way to secretly retaliate against this young he. Arba's lips curled into a scornful sneer as he hatched a plan. Hui Feng and Xiao Yi couldn't help but feel that it was better if the Crown Princess didn't smile. This stiff sneer that tugged at the corners of her lips caused chills to run down her spine. Chapter 628. It was as if a knife had slashed the corner of an ice sculpture's mouth, suddenly splitting it open. The cold laughter was so lifeless that it made people shudder uncontrollably. Emolienne leaned in to listen, gently gazing at this little person as she listened. The two subordinates couldn't help but shudder again. They felt that the Crown Prince consort wouldn't be saying anything good right now, but just from the Crown Prince's expression, it was as though the Crown Prince was listening to the Crown Prince consort's warm and gentle voice as she spoke of her true feelings. It was a very strange scene. After saying that, the two of them looked at each other and continued to eat happily, not caring about the mood of their two subordinates who were looking at each other. Arba wiped her small mouth. I'll go to the garden to use the summoning talisman in a bit. Ever since she summoned Weak Chicken, it was useless no matter how she tried. She couldn't summon any ferocious beasts. Thus, she suspected that the summoning talisman couldn't summon an unlimited number of beasts. Perhaps it was related to her own talisman energy. For example, after she summoned a strange permanent Qingwan as a beginner talisman practitioner, she might have already reached the limit of her talisman practitioner level. Thus, if someone else used the summoning talisman she made and summoned a beast higher than her current intermediate talisman practitioner level, they might not have the chance to summon anything else. Even if she gave that person a bunch of summoning talismans, it would be useless. She used to naively dream of summoning a bunch of beasts and leading them to crush the enemy. Now, it looked like it was purely a dream. It's snowing heavily outside, little master, Xiao Yao couldn't help but say. It's fine, it'll only take a while. Arba shook her head. Although it's snowing heavily outside, the scenery isn't bad. Let's go together after eating, Emolienne said with a smile. The two ate breakfast around a small stove in the Eastern Palace's bedchamber. On the other side, Qiao Zhongheng, Su Jiao, and Granny Niu had already holed up in the run-down temple for more than 3 days. This was poles apart from Su Jiao's original plan of Qiao Zhongbong begging and kneeling to invite elderly lady and their family back to the Marquis' estate in less than 3 days. It could even be said that Su Jiao couldn't understand why Qiao Zhongbong was so heartless this time. Granny Niu and her family huddled in front of the bonfire. Their tattered jackets couldn't block the wind at all. Other than them, there were a few other families living in the corners of the dilapidated temple. Those families had arrived early and had already occupied the advantageous positions in the dilapidated temple. What was left for Su Jiao and the others was near the dilapidated temple's entrance, and there was even a hole in the ceiling. The cold wind outside whistled, and there was even snow floating above their heads. It was so cold that the group of people were frozen into pitiable dogs. As soon as Su Jiao entered the run-down temple, she made her husband kick up a fuss, wanting to snatch a good place to squat. In the end, there were 2 body refinement disciples from 2 of the clans, and they worked together to beat up Qiao Zhongheng. Instantly, the meddlesome couple cowered and didn't dare to say anything. Granny Niu was flipping a small pot. The soup inside was very clear, with only 2 vegetable leaves floating in it. The porridge was as thin as water. Even so, the group of people around her were still swallowing their saliva and staring at her with stars in their eyes. Didn't you say that your uncle would come to pick up that old woman in 2 days? Why was there no sound at all? Did you leak the news of this old woman being here to the Marquis' estate's people or not? Granny Niu cast a sidelong glance at elderly Lady Qiao, who was lying on the side, and grinned disdainfully. How could I not? Su Jiao was also so anxious that a string of bubbles formed at the corner of her mouth. Granny Niu humphed. Honestly speaking, if it weren't for her coveting the Marquis' estate's glory and wealth and wanting to establish a relationship with the Marquis' estate through Su Jiao, she wouldn't be willing to share her food with them. Continue at night. Don't rush me, I can't fly. I just got off work and am still on the way. Update at night at least 10:30 p.m. Chapter 629. The porridge with 2 vegetable leaves floating in the small pot began to boil. Pairs of eyes stared fixedly and impatiently. When Granny Niu took the small pot down from the firewood rack, eldest brother Wei and his wife, as well as their son, had already impatiently rushed up to scoop the porridge. When it was Qiao Zhongheng's family of 3's turn, there really was only a mouthful of soup left, and it was unknown whose stomach it could fill. The couple could only reluctantly let their precious son eat. Mom, I'm about to starve to death. Qiao Long drank a mouthful of soup and felt his stomach rumble. Rubbing his starving stomach, Xiao Long recalled the various pastries that were placed on the table when he barged into the Marquis's estate. He regretted that he didn't rush up to grab a few pieces to fill his stomach before arguing with them. "Sai, when your father finds a job as a guard, he'll have food to eat. He wouldn't be able to take it if he continued to starve." It looked like he could only fill his stomach with dirt first. Elderly Lady Qiao lay on the ground covered with withered grass and groaned. Su Jiao shot her a glance and simply couldn't vent her anger. This D*MN old hag truly had a precious life. These past few days, she had been ordering her around all day, and she had to serve her food, drink, and poop. She was simply an old good-for-nothing. After all, elderly lady had enjoyed several years of peace and quiet, so how could she endure this kind of hardship? On the first night of arriving at the rundown temple, she started coughing because she caught a cold from the wind. Her illness didn't seem to improve these past 2 days, and she kept mumbling about returning to the Marquis's estate in a daze, which annoyed Su Jiao. While she was unconscious, Su Jiao still had to serve her poop, which disgusted Su Jiao to no end. However, if they left her alone and allowed her to poop on herself, the one who would stink would still be themselves. Su Jiao thought of a good idea. In any case, there wasn't enough food, so they wouldn't give her food or water. It wouldn't be so troublesome if she ate and drank less. As a result, elderly lady only drank 2 mouthfuls of thin soup these past few days, so she was already somewhat delirious from her illness. "Your mother-in-law won't die from her illness, right?" Granny Niu was very disdainful of Wang Nei's behavior. If she didn't have a precious life, then she shouldn't pretend to be an old madam from a noble family. They came from a similar village. That day, when Granny Niu saw Wang Shi wearing gold and silver and being raised to a healthy appearance, she felt sullen in her heart. However, after being exposed to the wind and rain for the past 3 days, Wang Shi had lost a lot of weight. She had also become much darker. She looked a bit like an old lady from the countryside. Su Jiao had sold off all the valuable items she had on her, including that leather jacket that could ward off the cold, in exchange for food. It was also because she didn't have a cotton-padded jacket to protect her from the cold that the old lady's precious body was blown away by the cold wind on the first day. How could that be? "Auntie Niu, don't worry. I'll find someone to go to the Marquis's estate and cry. Just say that the Marquis' master's mother is about to die of starvation or illness in the ruined temple. Let's see what my uncle is going to do. He still dares to not come and take me back. So, Auntie Niu, I'll have to trouble you to lend me some food." Old woman Niu tightly clutched the bag of grain as she looked at Su Jiao with a guarded gaze. "I gave you quite a bit 2 days ago. Everyone said that they were going out to invite someone to the Marquis's estate to cry to Chen, but there hasn't been any news until now. I think that your uncle is most likely a black-hearted person. If he wasn't black-hearted, how could he possibly drive his mother out of the estate? Your eldest branch wouldn't have come to take you back." Auntie Niu, that's because I entrusted the wrong person before. This time, I guarantee that I'll entrust an honest person to go to my uncle's place and cry for an entire day." Granny Niu was skeptical. She grabbed a small pinch of millet between her fingers and reluctantly placed it into Su Jiao's open pouch. Chapter 630. Su Jiao couldn't help but inwardly curse Granny Niu for being stingy. She even feigned a bashful smile on her face as she took the small bag of rice and went out to take care of matters. There was a pile of snow outside, making the road difficult to walk on. Su Jiao picked from the side of the street for a long time before picking an old beggar who looked like he was about to die. She gave half of the pitiful amount of millet that Granny Niu gave her to the old beggar. After giving him such instructions, she hid the remaining bit of millet in her pocket in case of an emergency. However, despite Su Jiao's extreme scheming, she didn't know that the old beggar couldn't even step onto Minshun Boulevard. Ever since Su Jiao's party caused a ruckus, Minshun Boulevard had been patrolled by royal guards. Idle beggars and refugees were chased away before they could even approach the various estates. Thus, while Su Jiao was dreaming of returning to the Marquis's estate to enjoy life, she didn't know that Qiao Zhongbang and company didn't know where they went at all. Arbor naturally wouldn't pay attention to Su Jiao's party anymore. To her, these people had already lost their meaning in her life, and she treated them as if they didn't exist. After finishing breakfast, the crown prince put on a thick cloak for her and held her small hand as they walked towards the garden together. After exiting the door, Arbor looked at the flying snow that filled the sky and finally felt a chill assaulting her. The crown prince's hand was warm and cozy, like a burning flame. Holding his hand was like holding a small stove, and she didn't feel cold at all. The duo slowly walked in the snow, leaving behind 2 rows of crooked footprints of different sizes, both deep and shallow. Arbor looked back, and her eyes brightened as her lips curled up. If this snow continues, it'll become a disaster. Xiao Yao held an umbrella for the duo as she followed behind them, stumbling along the way. There's no need to worry about that. 2 days ago, Sir He from the Ministry of Works already reported the disaster to His Highness the Crown Prince. All the major fortifications have already been alerted and ordered to repair the roads. Hui Feng couldn't help but interject. He Qijing is someone who can do things, the Crown Prince praised. The Crown Prince praised. Holding Qiao Mu's small hand, the 2 people arrived at a slightly spacious area in the garden. Baby, here it is. Summon. The Crown Prince took 2 steps back. Xiao Yao ran over to Arbor and held an umbrella for him. Her little face was filled with excitement. Miss, don't tell me you've recruited another weakling this time. All right, where's that weak chicken? Arbor's mouth twitched. Coo. The weak chicken that Xiao Yao was thinking about suddenly flapped its wings and flew onto Xiao Yao's shoulder. Xiao Yao reached out and held her up. She chuckled and said, Miss, don't say that. I don't know if it's because I'm used to it, but I feel that this weak chicken is quite pleasing to the eye. Don't you think it's prettier than before? Hui Feng rolled his eyes at skyward. First miss, that's because you didn't see how weak chicken smashed the Reverend Book Hall and froze Sephora Flower Palace. You won't say that if you see it. Miss, I hope you can summon a big beast this time. Arbor waved her hand at her, indicating for her to move further away. Right. She was someone who was going to summon a beast. Taking a deep breath, Arbor took out an intermediate-level blue summoning talisman inscribed with ebony. She mumbled to the blue summoning talisman for a while before a faint light suddenly appeared. Activate the talisman. A glowing blue light abruptly filled the air before their eyes. Everyone widened their eyes and held their breaths in anticipation. Xiao Yao even looked around curiously, anxiously looking at where a fierce beast would suddenly emerge from in the snow. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.